Hey, it's Calkert. I've done a lot of dungeons this expansion. I'm 5 out of 8 for KSM, and I've done the rest on at least a 14. I've really been putting some work into Mythics this season, and I've definitely noticed that some dungeons are better experiences on Demolog than others. Some make you feel like an absolute pumper, while in others it's like you're doing no damage at all. Here is the Shadowlands dungeon tier list for Demonology Warlocks. We'll go in the order that they're in the adventure guide, starting with the other side. There are a ton of places in DOS where being a Warlock feels useful. Having an AoE stun for both the little explodey dudes and the homies that turn into flying snakes is really helpful. Also, Demo usually goes Night Fae, meaning you have access to the giant stunning urns that let you do massive pulls. Speaking of massive pulls, this dungeon has a ton of them on hierarchies. If your tank is following a good route, they're pulling big. And your uncapped AoE loves that. You'll be pumping like crazy through the entire dungeon. The only real gripe I have with DOS is the bosses. They're all single target, which is less optimal for demo. They also all have a lot of downtime, with Zayaxa making you dodge explosions and Wazala's out-of-body experience. This can leave you feeling like you're spending a lot of time setting up with no real payoff. Despite the boss fights, DOS still gets a solid A for its sizable and frequent pulls, as well as providing opportunities to use your utility, and prove that you're not just a worse mage like the KSM say you are. Halls of Atonement is baller for Demolog. Every pack has like 6 mobs in it, and your AoE is mad useful in Echelon for cleaving down the little demon dudes. Also, your cooldowns line up really well for the entire first part of the dungeon. You can generally Tyrant on every shard of Halkias and the boss. Also, this room is a lot of fun as demo. While you might not be able to go as ham in this room as something like a Balance Druid, it's still a ton of fun just cutting loose and throwing imps at everything. One downside to this dungeon is that most of the bosses are single target, but it's not too much of a drawback. With how huge the pulls are and how fast and easy this dungeon is in general, I'm going to give it a solid A tier. Also, quick pro tip, your Felguard's interrupt also stuns, so you can use it to stop loyal beasts from going off. Mists of Tyrannus Scythe on Demolock is how you say chef's kiss. Pulls are huge with a ton of mobs, there are 2 bosses where your cleave is super useful, and you single-handedly make the maze look like an any percent glitchless speedrun. Mortal Coil into Fear on the freeze tag Fox makes it look like a joke. Soul Shape gets you out of Mind Link instantly. Played well, Demolog can pump in this dungeon like no other. The dungeon is overall just fast, easy, and really nice to look at. One minor downside is that you don't have CC to skip the middle pack at the beginning, and the lock gate skip is impossible unless you use the console to zoom your camera out further. But when it comes to raw power, Demolog owns this dungeon. It is S tier content. Plaguefall is the most okayest of dungeons on the list, I think. Pulls are big, but not huge. Bosses don't super reward you for being able to cleave, except maybe Domina. Icus is explicitly a pain in the ass for Demolog because your melee demons have to run a mile every time he jumps. But really, I just don't have a lot to say about Plaguefall. It's just okay. C tier. I love Sanguine Depths. It's a dungeon that just feels good to do. Every boss feels rewarding to kill. The gauntlet at the end is like a ton of fun and full of huge groups to cleave. And really, barring any wipes, it doesn't take too long. It's generally a nice quick run. Warlock utility comes into play in a couple spots, namely using curses to slow casts that are hard to interrupt and having an AoE stun in case too many ticks are engorging at the same time. General Call is a pretty decent final boss for Demolog specifically, because while you're playing Dance Dance Revolution, your demons are still doing damage. A fun prank to play on your healers is to not pick up any orbs during the third boss's raid wide, and then just use Unending Resolve to see if you live. That's really it though. Sanguine Depths is a lot of fun, pretty easy, and has some good pulls for Demolog. I'd say it's A tier. Fuck Spires of Ascension. Oh my god, this dungeon is the anti-Demolog dungeon. Everything seems cool and fine up until after the first boss, and then boom, they hit you with this shit. Half the packs in the dungeon have one of these assholes who reduces the amount of AoE damage their allies take by 75%. Guess what? All of Demo's damage is considered AoE. Your spec is hard nerfed by 75% on half the packs in the dungeon until these things die. Plaguefall and TOP have this too, but it's not as egregious. In Plaguefall, it's mostly a boss mechanic that you don't really have to deal with if you have a good tank, and in TOP, it's one pack. That's supposed to be like a quirky little challenge. In Spires, it's every other fucking pack. Also, the bosses in this dungeon suck and are annoying. And don't even get me started on how buggy throwing the spear is. Spires sucks for demo, and it sucks in general. It's dog water. Necrotic Wake is definitely a return to form. Blizzard took the liberty of sprinkling lots of little non-elite mobs all over this dungeon so you can pad your stats and cleave like crazy. You bring strong interrupts, stuns, and fears for troublesome casts like Final Bargain. Demo's incidental cleave damage is also useful on 3 of the 4 bosses. You can kill the bugs on Blightbone, the ads on Amarth, and the A-bomb on Stitchflesh, all while DPSing the boss. Nalthor is kind of rough for demo because you don't really have a burst window to do while his shield is down, so it's kind of a slog, but he's the last boss, so it doesn't matter too much. Wake is so much fun for demo and really lets them show off their utility. It's an S tier dungeon for sure. Theater of Pain. 2/3 of the dungeon are good. 66% of the dungeon is good. The first boss, Gorechop, and Zav all have mechanics that reward you for cleaving. They have ads. And the pulls in their respective wings are also pretty solid, minus Gorechop's stupid jumping things and the damage reduction mob in the Gladiator wing. But then you get to Koltharok's wing, and you kind of want to gouge your eyes out. The packs are generally only 2 or 3 mobs, sometimes only 1. The portal section is spaced weirdly so that using Tyrant always feels wrong. And the tornado thing the skeletons cast is bullshit. But on lock, the other 2 wings are big pumping, smooth sailing, and the final boss is a lot of fun. So, in America, 66% is usually a D, but I'll round up. It's a C tier dungeon. And that's my tier list for Dungeons & Shadowlands from the point of view of Demonology Warlock. There are a lot of high scores on this list, which might just be me being biased, but I really like Shadowlands, and I think it's a good environment for playing Demonology. If you're thinking about it, try it out. I've got a couple guides up to help you get started. Again, this is Calker off of Arathora. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, and peace and love to everyone.